Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today. So let's talk about WWE. Let's talk about, when you talk about WWE, really what everyone's talking about right now, and that is the status, the future, the drama, the tension surrounding the black and gold brand known as NXT. Now, of course, last night NXT was on the air, and tensions reportedly were running very high inside the Capitol Wrestling Center at the Performance Center in Orlando ahead of last night's NXT television taping. Now, a new report from WrestleVotes on Twitter indicated that the mood is an interesting one to say the least, as tensions were reportedly very high last night. This is what the report had to say, quote, "The mood at the PC today ahead of tonight's NXT show, ... Oh boy." Now, as literally what they said, that's not me doing a very bad cowboy impression. Oh boy, tensions running high to say the least. That is what the report stated. Now, of course, these tensions are running high because Friday saw the release of 13 NXT talents in the latest round of budget cuts by WWE this year in 2021. Now, those names include the likes of Bronson Reed, Bobby Fish, Leon Ruff, Tyler Rust, Jake Atlas, Mercedes Martinez, Asher Hale, Giant Sanjir, Zechariah Smith, Kona Reeves, Ari Sterling, Desmond Troy, and referee Stephen Smith. Now, it's been reported, as I mentioned previously here on the channel, that these releases are part of major changes coming to NXT in the near future. Those reports included the likes of new branding, new lights, new graphics, but more importantly, a new vision and a new philosophy when it comes to the NXT brand, specifically coming from the top of WWE because it comes from the chairman himself, the chairman and CEO Vince McMahon, and his minions, his underlings of John Laurinaitis, Bruce Pritchard, Nick Khan, etc., all of whom are now regarding NXT specifically as developmental. It's no longer, or I don't even think it ever was, but certainly isn't being viewed by anyone now as WWE's third brand akin to Raw and SmackDown. There's been a change in terms of recruitment philosophy as well from Vince McMahon. They want NXT to become, once again, a pure feeder system for Raw and SmackDown. They only want to be signing people that are under 30, bigger guys that can become main event stars in their eyes, like Roman Reigns. Hence why they released a lot of those names last week, being older people or, once again, being budget cuts or smaller as well. The irony is, of course, that you've got people like Adam Cole, and we are going to talk about Adam Cole today, who is rapidly approaching the end of his contract, the same with Pete Dunne, and with this new philosophy, surely they wouldn't fit into that scenario. Now, obviously, the reports previously stated there can be exceptions like Adam Cole, but it all just seems a load of nonsense, doesn't it? Now, of course, last night's NXT episode was the first live show in 2 weeks and actually airing on the USA Network. The last 2 weeks, of course, were pre-taped and aired on Sci-Fi due to coverage of the Tokyo Olympics. So I don't blame the tension for being high at the Performance Center yesterday. I think, as a fan of pro wrestling and as a fan of someone that's watched NXT in the past, and I was a big fan of NXT in, let's call them the peak years, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, that sort of era, that period of time, looking back on it now, is probably going to be considered to be the golden age of NXT programming, which is sad. But I, obviously, like everyone else, really enjoyed NXT during that time period. I, like a lot of people, think that NXT, when they moved to the USA Network in 2019, they lost a lot of their identity. Whatever intangible magic NXT had previously when they were a 1 hour show on the network, when they were more underground and they were lesser known and they did these great takeover shows, they kind of lost that. They lost that by moving to USA. They lost that by trying to adapt themselves as a third brand, ironically. Trying to adapt themselves as akin to a Raw and SmackDown. They did kind of lose that intangible quality that made them feel special. And with NXT just being gutted, absolutely gutted, over the course of the last few months, of course the tension was high, because those reports previously come out there that these calls, as they always are, I always stress this, but as these calls always are, they're Vince McMahon calls. They've got nothing to do with Triple H or Shawn Michaels or Matt Bloom or anyone at the Performance Center in Orlando. So, of course, tension's high. If you're someone like Triple H or you're Shawn Michaels or you're whoever, especially a Triple H, you've been developing, growing, and putting the foundations of this brand for 8 years, 9 years now. The redevelopment and the redesign of NXT began in sort of 2012 when they first moved to Full Sail. all of that kind of stuff. It even predates the Performance Center being opened in Orlando. That was in 2013. So you've put all of this work, you've put all of this effort, this blood, this sweat, this tears, and you're seeing it just, I mean, gutted and absolutely gutted, and being told that either it's not working or we're going in a different direction, and that's because of Vince McMahon ultimately changing his minds. But you know for a fact, and the reports are out there to suggest this as well, you know for a fact it's because people like your Bruce Pritchards, people like your Nick Khans and your John Laurinaitis, they're in the ear. They're in the ear of Vince McMahon saying NXT's not doing a good job. It lost to AEW on Wednesday nights. How embarrassing for WWE. It's not fit for purpose. We need to do this. We need to do that. And if you're Triple H, you must throw your hands up in the air. I mean, he must be beyond frustrated anyway with how things are playing out with NXT for the last few years when it comes to, again, not being as successful against Dynamite, which was obviously the intention. Furthermore, all of these characters and superstars and wrestlers that you build up on the brand, and you spend a lot of time establishing, building, rounding the characters. Then they get called up to Raw or SmackDown and they just get butchered, and the character gets removed, and then eventually they get released, and you must look at that being like, what a waste of time their run in NXT was. And then Triple H has to go on these media calls and justify it to all of these websites, journalists, channels like this by saying, well, sometimes it just doesn't work. You can play well in the minor leagues, but once you get to the big leagues, it doesn't always work out. But deep down, he knows it's BS. And now his stars are being released, and his vision for what NXT could be is just vanishing. Poof, it's gone. So, of course, tensions will be high. Now, I don't expect Triple H. I know some people go, Triple H should just leave and start his own promotion. Triple H is not going to leave WWE. Obviously, he's married to Stephanie McMahon. Two, he's got stock in the company. Even if he decided to do his own thing, he'd probably keep his stock. So that's not going to happen. I can imagine he would be very upset, and I can imagine you would like to think that even if he wasn't totally aware of these talents being let go or doesn't have much of a say, surely he must be. I mean, you can't have discussions about what NXT is without having Triple H involved. Surely not. I mean, that is his. At the end of the day, if you want to look at it from a just corporate point of view, that's his department. That's what he's responsible for. He's the executive producer of NXT as well. So surely he has to be involved in those discussions, whether he likes the direction or not. And ultimately, it is Vince McMahon's decision. It's his company. But you would expect tensions to be high. I don't think that's a surprise at all that tensions are high, and they'll continue to be high. And the reports previously have said that USA Network aren't totally comfortable with these changes. They're concerned that it's going to be a negative for the product. And what's funny about it is that prior to being pre-taped and moving to Sci-Fi a couple of weeks ago, NXT was doing okay in terms of viewership and ratings for NXT. They were something, high 600, 700,000. For NXT, that's not bad. That's not bad for NXT. That's not what Dynamite's doing on Wednesday, and it wasn't what NXT was doing on Wednesdays either. But and maybe there was an expectation they would be doing much higher on the Tuesday night slot. But it's going to be interesting to see how these changes and how this philosophy changes things. Is it going to help WWE in the long run? Is it going to be the end of NXT in the long run? I mean, imagine it's a case of it gets so bad that USA Network decide to kick them off the air. I don't think that happens for a while, but it's a possibility in the future. So it's a really fascinating time when it comes to NXT. Ultimately, it looks like more releases are set to come, and maybe that's why the tension's high also. You're walking around on eggshells anyway in WWE because of that just bizarre corporate environment that they have. But on top of that, you're coming to work knowing that tomorrow you could get fired. What kind of environment is that in general? So, of course, tensions would be high in that setting. Now, I do want to talk about the Monday Night Raw ratings because the viewership and the rating, the key demo ratings, the really interesting one here. Now, Monday's live WWE edition of Monday Night Raw drew an average of 1.790 million viewers on the USA Network. This is according to Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics. Now, this is down 2% from last week's 1.821 million viewers, so essentially flat. But it is the lowest viewership since July 12th. That's the lowest viewership since WWE returned to the road. Now, Raw drew a 0.49 rating in the 18 to 49 key demographic this week. This is down 4% from last week's 0.51 key demo rating. That 0.49 rating represents 629,000 viewers in that 18 to 49 range, which is down 4.26% from the 657,000 viewers in the 18 to 49 demographic from last week. Now, Monday's Raw marked the lowest viewership since the return of fans to the crowd and tied with the July 6th show for the lowest key demo rating since the return of live fans too. I think what's interesting to say is that, so this week's Monday did I mentioned a 0.49. I think Dynamite did something like a 0.43. Put it this way, it's close. It's very close. Now, obviously, people will look at this in however way they want to. The thing is with statistics and numbers is they can be manipulated to fit any narrative that you want. I think that's important to point out too. But look, I mentioned this before when it comes to the trajectory of Raw and Dynamite. And I know that certain diehard WWE fans, again, will point out that, well, Raw still was viewed by nearly 1.8 million viewers on Monday, and Dynamite's just getting 1.1 million viewers on Wednesday nights. It's not even close. It's not even a comparison. And people that are more onto the AEW side of things will look at it and say, yeah, but the key demos are close. They're very close, and they're getting closer every single week. I think that there's only one outcome here. Realistically, is that at some point in the not too distant future, maybe even by the end of the year, I think Dynamite will bring in a larger key demographic than key demo rating, that 18 to 49 demo. I think they'll bring in a bigger number than Raw. I do. Total viewership, I think that's way off. I do think that's way off. I think Raw has to really bottom out in terms of viewership. Lord knows it bottomed out creatively a long time ago. But in terms of total viewership, it'll have to bottom out. We'd be looking at record lows once again, and I say it every time Raw does a record low, is there will be a new record low in a couple of months' time, because that's the direction that Raw's headed in. So it will probably take towards the end of the year, some point next year, but some point in the not too distant future. I'm talking within the next 2, 3, 4 months. Certainly by the end of the year, I think we'll see a situation where Dynamite in that key 18 to 49 demo starts to surpass Raw. I really do. And the reason I say that is because of the names that are probably going to come into AEW at this point. If Dynamite is, less than a couple of points away from Raw in that key demographic, and you're going to bring in CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, the possibility of a Bray Wyatt as well, those kind of names that are on the market that are likely to go to AEW, they're game changers. They are enough to move the needle. When you're talking about just points, you're not even talking about big gaps anymore in terms of the key demographic. Again, when it comes to viewership, it's going to take a bit more. But in terms of that key demographic, when you're talking about points, if CM Punk can bring in an extra point, and Daniel Bryan can bring in an extra point, and a Bray Wyatt can bring in an extra point, that's enough to get them over that line and then start drawing more on that key demographic than Monday Night Raw. And you do have to question for WWE, when is enough in that situation? When do they realistically start to say that this isn't good enough? Because you can come up with whatever excuses you want. You can come up with the Olympics. You can come up with Monday Night Football, cable news, or whatever. But once you've got a wrestling show, another wrestling show from another company is bringing in more viewers in that key demographic than your, it's not the A show anymore, but it certainly is one of your franchises. One of your, the big show that's been on the air for nearly 30 years. When do you start panicking? Because if it was me, it would be soon. It certainly would be soon. Now, WWE would say, well, Monday's Raw viewership was up 4% from the same week in 2020, and the key demographic was up 4.3% from the same week in 2020. Okay, that's fine, but that's because fans are back. And in reality, again, if you want to compare it to an AEW, at that same time, they're up like 40% from last year. And its trajectories, like I said, AEW is going that way, Raw's going that way. And eventually they will meet. It's a matter of time when it comes to that. And there is so much you need to fix about Monday Night Raw. I don't think it's one thing that does it. I think that moving it to a 2-hour show would help. But even that's not enough at this point. It's a creatively bankrupt show. I think just the way WWE produces pro wrestling in general is just... It doesn't work. It doesn't work. But in reality, this is why Vince McMahon says AEW isn't competition, because they don't care, because they're making more money than they've ever made in their history. When it comes to these television contracts, these deals with NBC Universal for Peacock, with Saudi Arabia for the pay-per-view. So they just don't care. It's like the product itself now doesn't matter. It's all of the sponsorships and the contracts that come with it. That's truly what matters. And it is a bit of a sad state of affairs when you look at it like that, because it's corporate. It's very, very corporate. Now, shifting back to NXT, we have some big matches announced for NXT TakeOver 36. Of course, that is SummerSlam weekend later this month. It was announced during last night's broadcast that the $1 Million champion LA Knight will defend his $1 Million championship against Cameron Grimes. It will be their third meeting, but there's going to be a new stipulation on this one. WWE Hall of Famer, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, will become LA Knight's butler if Grimes loses the match. Grimes is currently working as Knight's butler after losing to him at the Great American Bash. I would assume this will be the time that Cameron Grimes does become the $1 Million champion and Ted DiBiase, and they'll have their big embrace. This is what it's been building towards, realistically. So I think Cameron Grimes wins that one, and I think that will be the way they write Ted DiBiase off of television. I think that'll be the direction they go. And I mean, I could be wrong. We might have some more vignettes. They might drag this out even further, but I don't see what's more to be told there. Finally, as well, the NXT General Manager William Regal has announced the undisputed finale, which is Adam Cole versus Kyle O'Reilly 3 for NXT TakeOver 36. This match will see Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly do battle in a 2 out of 3 falls rules. O'Reilly was allowed to pick the first stipulation, and he went with the standard pinfall or submission match, which is just it's the classic dumb baby face, isn't it? What's your first fall going to be? Well, the fall I really want is a traditional match. After everything they've gone through, after everything they've done, unsanctioned matches, this and that. What's your first match I want to have? I would love to have a standard match. Baby faces. That really gets him over as a baby face with the crowd, doesn't it? Just so silly. Cole picked the second stipulation. He went with a street fight, and even the heel seems more popular in that sense, which again is crazy. William Regal then picked the third stipulation. If needed, it will be fought inside of a steel cage. So it will be inside of a steel cage. I would see a situation where probably they win their own respective matches they chose, and then they'll end up in a steel cage. Ironically, this could be Adam Cole's final WWE match. Of course, his contract does expire after SummerSlam, after NXT TakeOver. This could be the last match that he has in WWE. He decided to extend his contract to finish off this program and negotiate during that time period too. So we'll have to wait and see on that. To be honest with you, I get it that this is the split of the Undisputed Era, and I get that that was such a big chapter in NXT's history, especially the history that, you know, that what NXT is going to become. The issue is that I'm so done with it. The fact they've stretched this on until August. I mean, I really thought the blow off was NXT TakeOver Stand and Deliver. That was WrestleMania weekend, because that was an unsanctioned match. Where do you go from there, right? Where do you go from there? Unsanctioned match. They went from an unsanctioned match of William Regal being like, I don't want to be held responsible. WWE and NXT, we don't want to be held responsible for what you do to each other. If you get hurt, if you get injured, we don't want to be held responsible for that. To a traditional singles match, again, going backwards, and now they're doing the match again. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure the match will be great. The match at NXT TakeOver Stand and Deliver, we did a watch long for it. I thought it was personally a bit too long. It went for something ridiculous, nearly 40 minutes. And that can be done if done properly. And it was a good match, but sometimes it's the issue of NXT. Sometimes it's just near fall for near fall's sake. And AEW, that's a big problem for them as well. But it'll be a good match. I have no doubt about that. And it'll be very good. I think it'll be very long as well. But it's a loaded card. TakeOver, despite what's going on with NXT right now, it's a loaded card. TakeOver. You've got this match. You've got Raquel Gonzalez versus Dakota Kai. You've got, obviously, the main event, Karrion Kross and Samoa Joe, which I would have been really excited for had Karrion Kross not been losing on Raw recently. But they're still exciting matches. And look, it really could be Adam Cole's final match. And obviously, as well, on that show, too, you've got the NXT United Kingdom Championship match of Ilya Dragunov versus Walter. Arguably the match I'm looking forward to the most, because I think that's going to be the match of the weekend, including SummerSlam. So that's very exciting too. Speaking of NXT as well, we've got a Title Tuesday edition of NXT next week for the go-home edition of NXT TakeOver 36. William Regal announced 2 matches for next Tuesday. NXT Tag Team Champions Wesley and Nash Carter of MSK will defend the championships against Imperium's Marcel Bartel and Fabian Aichner. Also, the NXT Cruiserweight Championship will be on the line as Kushida defends against Roderick Strong of Diamond Mine. I do think that we are going to see at least one title change next week. I'm probably leaning more towards the Cruiserweight Championship changing hands. I think we could see a situation where Roderick Strong wins the Cruiserweight Championship. Despite Diamond Mine releasing title, or WWE releasing Tyler Russ from Diamond Mine, even though they just debuted, I think we could see a situation where Strong wins. I think he's just signed a new contract. There was reports that NXT wanted to push the Cruiserweight division, push Roderick Strong as part of that, so I see Roderick Strong winning that one. As far as the NXT Tag Team Championships go, I think that one could go either way. Walter, of course, is in the United States because of that TakeOver match, so maybe we'll see 2 title changes next week, but certainly I think we're going to see the Cruiserweight Championship change hand next week. We have one name in the final of the NXT Breakout Tournament. Last night's episode on the USA Network saw Odyssey Jones defeat Trey Baxter in the first semi-finals bout, so he's advanced to the finals. Next week's NXT show will feature Carmelo Hayes against Duke Hudson in the second semi-finals match. I think we're probably going to see Carmelo Hayes win that one. Again, I don't know about that one, but I think Odyssey Jones from the start certainly has felt like the guy that they're trying to shine the spotlight on the most when it comes to this takeover, this breakout tournament. So I think he's probably the guy. There's been, again, reports out there for a while that they're big fans. WWE are very high on Odyssey Jones, so I would expect him to get to the final and win. Be interesting, of course, that the winner gets a title opportunity of their choosing. You would think that's the NXT Championship. So if it is Odyssey Jones, maybe we get Jones versus Joe in the future. That would be certainly exciting. Now, prior to NXT last night, there was a story released by WWE that Ember Moon had been pulled from last night's NXT episode. WWE announced that Moon is now medically unable to compete, as determined by NXT medics earlier on in the day. She was scheduled to face Saray in a first-time ever match on last night's NXT, but Saray instead faced Dakota Kai. Now, Ember Moon reacted to this. She said, quote, "This has been an extremely rough month. I'm angry and gutted. I was really looking forward to the match and getting back on track, but I just got another pothole in the road. I'm sorry." It isn't totally clear as to why she was medically no longer cleared for action. Fightful Select put something out and basically said that Ember Moon was just not cleared. They weren't given a specific reason as to why that's not the case, but she's just not cleared. She hasn't wrestled since the July 13 episode of NXT, so I don't know if this has been a lingering thing or a longer term thing, but it sucks. I mean, this is someone that's had a lot of injury troubles over the last few years. Of course, the big one was the Achilles tear, and she's done good work since she came back to NXT, and that was, what, earlier this year? Or was that last year? I can't remember. Time goes by so quickly. But it sucks. So hopefully she does get cleared soon, and hopefully it's not too serious of an issue. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these WWE news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.